Hey y'all, welcome back to Bookishrealm. I feel like I haven't sat down and did a video for this channel in weeks, but that's not true. Kind of, sort of. It just feels like I haven't sat down in front of a camera for this channel in a while, but I don't know what that is. Because it's probably been like a week, to be honest with you. By the time this video goes up, it would have been a week, which in the grand scheme of things is really not a long time. Anyway, as you can see by the title of this video, we are here today to talk about every book that I've ever given 1-star reviews to. Or I've given 1 star to. I'm still trying to figure out how I'm going to title this. This is going to be an interesting one because, believe it or not, I really do not give out that many 1-star reviews. I don't know if people think that I give out a lot of 1-star reviews, but a book really has to be abysmal and in the pits of hell for me to give it 1 star. But lately, there's been more 1 stars. I don't know what that is. Some expected, some a little on the unexpected side. So I thought I would just generally talk about why I give 1-star reviews, which I think I've done a review of this. I believe I've done, not a review, I've done a video of why I give 1-star reviews. If I have, I will link it in the card symbol above. But then we're going to dive a little bit into the books that I've given 1 star and why I have given them 1 star. And yeah, we'll go from there. It really only is, I would say on average, maybe anywhere between 12 to 15. So that's not bad. And the time that I've been tracking my reading, which has almost been like accurately tracking my reading, which has only been about 10 years now. 12 to 15 1 stars in 10 years. Either I'm really friendly and gracious, or I just know my reading taste, and I like to lean on the side of the fact that I just know my reading taste at this point, although sometimes I be given grace where grace is not needed. All right, so let's go ahead and jump into the first one. So the first one that I have on this 1-star list is motherfucking Peter Pan. So I read Peter Pan in January. I did it for my, what is it called? My Is This Book Problematic series. So the first one that I did was the Little House on the Prairie series with the first book, Little House in the Big Woods. And then I decided to pick up Peter Pan. Peter Pan, trash. Not only because of the problematic elements, but Peter Pan is boring. I mean, I think I've gotten so used to seeing the adaptations with Disney and, you know, Robin Williams did Hook. And then Jeremy Sumpter was a part of the live action one that they did like in the early 2000s. I'm so used to seeing all the adaptions that when I read Peter Pan, I was like, damn, this book is boring. And I did not know it was that dry. And I keep asking, like, how is any child now in 2023 supposed to enjoy a story like this? Granted, in the time that it was written, the definition of children's literature and what was appropriate and entertaining for children is much different than what we use today, but it was a slog to get through. I thought Captain Hook was probably the most corny villain that I've ever read in a book, hands down. Plain, period. Like, dry. The storyline was dry. Peter was an ass. I didn't feel sorry for Wendy. I felt Tinkerbell just was misunderstood. So there's that. But if you're interested in checking out my full review of that one, I will leave in the card symbol. This next set should be no surprise to any soul. It's 5 books, and all 5 of these books are in the series. And quite frankly, I think that my Goodreads reviews of these were damn hilarious. I really enjoyed writing reviews for these books. And the reason why I ended up rereading them was because I got asked to join into a group discussion. This was in 2020 when we were all in the midst of quarantining and we were just, you know, everybody was just reading, stuck in the house, doing whatever. And so Bethany had asked me to join in on doing a live show rereading the Twilight series in preparation for the release of the 5th book, which is Midnight Sun. I did a full review on this series as well, like talking about how nostalgia for Twilight is not enough not to call out the issues. And yeah, so I'm going to link that in the card symbol above. I'm just going to say briefly, Twilight was a big part of my high school career. Like, I remember being in chemistry reading Twilight. I remember when the movies came out, but I was also reading Twilight as a 16-year-old. I am now 31, and at the time that I was reading these books, I was either turning 29, or I was about to turn, or I was either already 29 or about to turn 29. They don't hold up. They do not hold up. They're problematic. It's cringy. Edward is an old fucking man. He's a vampire that's 100+ years old that is pining for a high school girl. He's an old man that wants to get with a high school girl, and I don't think I can ever let that go. Granted, I've read now lots of stories, romance stories, where there's this question of a vampiric relationship with a human because they're technically undead, meaning they're technically hundreds of years old, having relationships with people who are hundreds of years younger than them, and even though they physically look the same as their counterparts. Very interesting thing to kind of analyze and talk about. I know a lot of people in the community have had discussions about that, but also the writing was just cringe. The treatment of the indigenous communities in those books was absolutely cringe. It was horrible. And then we got Midnight Sun, which was just the icing on the cake, which was supposed to be a book told from Twilight, told from Edward's perspective, but really it just made it worse. And it was interesting to read Midnight Sun, quite honestly, because I feel like Stephenie Meyer reworked parts of her own story, which is just really weird because the book was essentially just supposed to be the narrative from his perspective, but she was literally changing things that had happened in the books so that she could rework Edward's perspective. I don't know. It was just really, really weird. It confirmed that Edward was a stalker. It gave pedophilia vibes. It gave, this is an unhealthy relationship. We have no boundaries. Some aspects of this feel very, very abusive. And I just couldn't, it's one of those series where it's like, everybody's like, oh my gosh, it's so romantic. And I'm like, but it's not romantic. It's not romantic at all. So those are the entire series. 1 star. I promise y'all I will never ever read a Stephenie Meyer book ever again. The next one that I have on my list is Blood and Snow by Rochelle Workman. Every time I do a video where I talk about the worst books that I've ever read, Rochelle Workman ends up on that list because Rochelle wrote this indie YA fantasy series that is supposed to be like a cross between Snow White, but then it's like vampires, and then there's cultural appropriation of Japanese culture. It was a hot mess. Like at first I was like, oh, this cover looks interesting. I'm digging the fairy tale retelling. I'm a sucker for a good fairy tale retelling. At the time I was just discovering what like the indie world through Kindle Unlimited. I was just diving into all of that. And so color me shocked when I read the book and I'm like, yo, like what is going on? When I say that this story had 1,000,001 plot lines, so many disrespectful aspects to Japanese culture, with just, it seemed like no reference or research was done to any of the elements included, then throwing in the vampires, it just didn't work. It was like the idea was good, but the execution just, it fell apart from page 10 to the end of the damn book. And since then I have never picked up an indie YA fantasy, which is sad because I really feel like I'm missing out. But if you want to blame anyone, you can blame Miss Workman, because that book was absolute filth. The next one that I have is actually an unpopular opinion because a lot of people love this book. This is an award-winning book, but it never sat right with me. And it's weird because I love the author. I absolutely adore the author, who's Mariko Tamaki. Love Mariko Tamaki on everything that they've done except this. I don't know what it was about this one. It's this one summer. It follows 2 girls who go away for the summer. And there are some tensions that are happening kind of like in their family dynamics. And it's supposed to be a coming of age story, but the characters for me were just awful. Like, they were atrocious. I feel like they were mean. I feel like they were judgmental. There was a lot of language that was used, and I tried so hard to see it from the perspective of the fact that these were younger, you know, children that we were talking about. Not extremely young, but they were younger girls, and so a lot of their behavior wasn't necessarily like not fundamental or developmentally appropriate, but just was so annoyed and frustrated that I was like, I can't do this. The artwork was impressive. Absolutely adored and loved the artwork. But where there were sections of this book where I was supposed to feel empathy, I wasn't digging it at all. I knew, and I could tell by the writing and like just the cues from the artwork, that there was supposed to be some empathetic or empathy building moments, and I couldn't connect. And usually I can connect, and it just didn't work with that one. So that one definitely is an unpopular opinion. Like if you go on Goodreads and you look at this one, Summer, a lot of people rave about that graphic novel, and it's so shocking to me that like I didn't like it. It's so disappointing. So the next one that I have on this one is just a 1 star by default. It is rammed by the reviews for this book, an erotic short story. So we did a dramatic reading of this on a live show, and I absolutely loved it. Bethany and I make a hell of a great team with dramatic readings. And essentially what this author did, apparently Leonard Delaney has a reputation for writing these wild erotica books that are off the chain. And so we read this one where literally he would take people's reviews on Amazon and create erotic scenes based off of those reviews, and it was strange. At one point our main character was fucking eggs. I like eggs were alive, like that had a personality and like could talk, and then like she was just screwing the most random things. At one point, I can't remember if she was screwing a computer or something. It was weird. It was just weird. And it was funny because I got to act out the scenes on a live show. But in hindsight, like thinking about the book as a whole, it was so bad. And my review was literally like, I fucking blame Izzy and Brie. Like, what did I just read? It was, I have not picked up a Delaney book since then. This was November of last year that we read it. And it was fun, but oh my God. Next on the list, I have Pride and Prejudice and Mistletoe by Melissa De La Cruz. This book officially turned me off to Melissa De La Cruz as a writer. It was the most horrible retelling of Pride and Prejudice that I have ever encountered in my lifetime. It was horrible. It seemed like the book didn't get edited. It really just, I feel like it was a gender swap of Pride and Prejudice, but it wasn't done well, and it just wasn't cohesive. It wasn't likable. I didn't fall in love with the characters. Like, Pride and Prejudice is one of my favorite Austen works. Sense and Sensibility is my favorite Jane Austen book, but I really enjoy Pride and Prejudice. It's one of Austen's works that I've read the most. I think I've read Pride and Prejudice 2 or 3 times, starting from when I was in high school up until like college, and even after college. I really enjoy Pride and Prejudice. All the adaptations of Pride and Prejudice, from the, what is it, Colin Firth, was he in like 1995, 1996, all the way up to what's the Pirates of the Caribbean? Not the Pirates of the Caribbean, girl, Keira Knightley. I love both of those adaptations of Pride and Prejudice. And so to read a Pride and Prejudice, and this is when I was going through like a Pride and Prejudice adaptation like phase. I was like explicitly looking for books that were Pride and Prejudice adaptations. And Jesus, like, oh my gosh, like I didn't like it at all. And actually this was kind of one of those books that Melissa De La Cruz did that was universally disliked. Like, nobody liked it, nobody enjoyed it. It was not good, y'all. And I think I have a review of this one. I don't know if I privated that review or not, but if I didn't, I'll leave it up in the card symbol above. The next one that I have is Catherine House, which I have kind of the unpopular opinion on this one. Catherine House is a very polarizing book. People either seem to like be like, no, this ain't it, 1 star, or people seem to like really, really love it. They're like 5 stars, I ate it up, it has so much meaning, it's just so well done. I didn't like it. I felt like it was a waste of time. I was confused. I felt like I was high. Like, I felt like I was straight on drugs reading the entire book. And I think that was supposed to be the intention because of what our character was experiencing in that book. But I left that book feeling like I was strung out trying to figure out what our main character was going through. And I realized at that point in reading that book, I cannot do books like that. Any book that makes me feel as though it's so far from reality in some ways that I myself as a reader feel like I'm inebriated. I don't like that feeling. I didn't like that feeling at all. It left me feeling very, very awkward. That was kind of the hugest thing for me in that. And granted, I think that's a good sign that Elizabeth Thomas is a heck of a writer to give someone that physical revulsion of reading a book. But y'all, that book wasn't for me, because sis was in a haze and so was I, and I was like, well, we can't both be fucked up going through this. So it was nope. The next one I have is Jumper by Melanie Crowder. This is one that was a huge disappointment for me. And the reason why it was a huge disappointment is because I went to Jumper really expecting to love it. It was sold so well. We're talking about the fact that this one had type 1 diabetes representation, supposedly, and that it was a sapphic romance element to it, and that this was about a girl who was a jumper who would put out wildfires. And I had never read a book that focused so heavily on the work that people do in terms of like trying to save the environment and trying to save places that have wildfires, especially out on the West Coast. So I was just really intrigued by it, and I was wondering how like her having type 1 diabetes was going to affect her ability to be able to do her job. Every time I talk about this book, I think I get kind of frustrated, and I'm not really the person to go to in terms of review for this because I don't have type 1 diabetes. I've grown up with family that has type 1 diabetes, but as I always say, proximity to doesn't mean that I share the experience. But it was like she didn't do any research, and it was weird because it was like things were correct in some way, but in a lot of ways like it just wasn't right. It was like terminology was thrown in there but not necessarily always used correctly. It was just strange. The sapphic element wasn't there. I didn't enjoy the sapphic relationship, and the only interesting thing was the jumping part. It just was a huge disappointment and letdown. And then I ended up going on Publishers Weekly and finding an interview with the author about Jumper. And she explicitly says in the interview that originally the internal conflict that she was looking at was giving the main character a leg injury that would prevent her from being able to do the jumping. But her editor said, we need to make the books more high stakes, so give her diabetes. Y'all, that's disgusting. That is disgusting. Like, first of all, you don't just throw something in there in terms of representation just to throw it in there, especially if you have no experience with the disability that you're dealing with, and then you don't do adequate research, you don't hire sensitivity readers. This is what we're talking about when we say writing outside of one's experience. Can it be done? In some ways, yes. If you do the appropriate research, you get sensitivity readers, and you take care when writing about an experience that is not your own. And then you need to ask the question, do I need to write this story? Has anybody that has type 1 diabetes been given the opportunity to craft this story? If they haven't, why do you feel like you have to be the first one to write it? Anyway, child, moving on, because that was such a disappointment. That was disgusting. That was just last year. And these last two have got to be, outside of Twilight, they have got to be the cherry on top, because both of these books piss me off in ways that I didn't know that a book could piss me off, because there's no reason why a book should be able to get under my skin, but these two did it. So the first one, Life After Death. If you know me, you should have expected to see this book on here. There's no way that I was gonna make this video and Life After Death was not gonna be on here. So if anybody knows, The Coldest Winter Ever by Sister Souljah is like the book. It is one of the books that broke me into reading more street lit. I have not reread The Coldest Winter Ever, and I haven't reread it in years. And when I did reread it and we did a live show discussion on The Coldest Winter Ever, I think that I was starting to see some elements of it that I was like, you know, I don't necessarily always agree with it, but it was still written well enough and cohesive enough to where I was like, you know what, I'm excited, like, if we ever get another book about winter. So when Simon & Schuster announced that Sister Souljah was writing Winter's Story, the follow-up, Black community is wild and ready for it, because The Coldest Winter Ever is known in so many different places in the Black community. I know so many people who've read The Coldest Winter Ever. Like, I've done a standalone review of The Coldest Winter Ever, and that video still gets views to this day, even though I shot that video like 6-7 years ago. People love it. The Black community was ready for it. And then the book dropped, and it was a shit show. I don't know who wrote that second book, because they weren't the same person who wrote the first one. And a lot of y'all have commented on my videos and have told me that the rumor is that The Coldest Winter Ever was ghostwritten and that she wrote Life After Death on her own. Granted, whenever I read it, I was like, why didn't the editor go through this book? And Simon & Schuster now has a pattern of releasing books because a name is attached to it, and they know that they're going to make money, because that should have never left an editor's table whatsoever. That shit should have stayed in the drafts. As a matter of fact, I did a full standalone review, which I'll link in the card symbol above, talking about how this was a complete shit show. It should have stayed in the drafts. I don't even know why sis wrote the book. It was horrible. I've never been more offended by what was written in the book. It was disgusting. Everything she said in that book was disgusting. It was offensive. It was propaganda. I hated it. If there is one book in my life that I will hate until the day I die, it is this book. I loathe this book. I have never hated a book so much in my life as much as I hate Life After Death. And the last one that I have on this one is so disappointing because it's a Black romance. And I was looking forward to finding more Black romances that were Halloween based. I was so excited when I found this one. It's called Taboo, a Halloween erotic short. Now, mind you, me and the author had a little tit for tat about this book. So I'm reading this book. You can see the cover. I'm like, oh, this is going to be good. You know, I love just, you know, novellas during the holiday seasons, or that are, I guess, seasonal themed books. And I was just going through reading all these Halloween books. Pick this one up, says Taboo, and I'm like, okay, I can dig a good Taboo romance. And if you don't want spoilers, I guess you probably shouldn't watch the rest of this video, to be honest with you. I'm thinking like, okay, so we have these twins, right? They're twin sisters. I'm thinking, oh yeah, like, it's Taboo because we're gonna find out they fucking the same man. No. No, 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 no. The last 2 pages of the book, we found out that the sisters been fucking each other. I hate when an author does not include a content warning. I do not do incest in my books at all. I draw a hard line with that. I don't care if it's insinuated. It's a lot of trauma for people who have been in incestuous situations, and there's no way to romanticize that for me. And so to go in this book thinking this is Taboo situation, get to like the last 4 to 5 pages of this damn book, and to find out that they've been fucking each other for a minute is disgusting. That's disgusting. It's gross, and you're full of shit for doing that, because you know you should have put a content warning. So I wrote my review. I put it on Goodreads. The author decided that she wanted to comment, and I was so pissed. I screenshotted it, put it on Twitter, and then I screenshot pieces of the book with the highlight incest portions and put that on Twitter too. Because what we're not going to do is pretend as if that book should not have a content warning on it. If that is somebody's interest, that is somebody's interest, but it's not my interest, and I don't want to read that when I go into my books at all. Everybody knows that. When I read my romance, I can do Taboo now. I can push the line with Taboo, but that is my hard line. That is a hard no. Outside, I mean, honestly, Sister Souljah takes me. She takes me to, she literally took us to the pits of hell in that book. Literally took us to the pits of hell in that book. But this one is not a, like, it's not far behind it. Because if there's one thing that I cannot stand is surprise stuff like that. Especially when you know it's on the darker side. And granted, I know that there's a lot of inhibitions that you have to let go when you read dark romance, but every dark romance that I've ever encountered, authors have a decency to say like, hey, this book has X, Y, and Z, these kinks. If this is not your kink, you might not want to read this book. Sis could have done me a favor and put that there was that kink in the book. Don't write it as a plot surprise. Don't write incest as a plot twist. That's not cute at all. It's disgusting. It's gross. It's Alright, y'all, so that's it. Those are all the books that I've given 1-star reviews to. I've written reviews for all those. A lot of those I've done video reviews of. I guess when I write a 1-star review, like, I'd be feeling so amped up, I have to do a video. I don't do a lot of rent reviews, but if I give a book a 1-star review, I feel like you deserve to be dragged for filth. And clearly, I really feel strongly about that because a lot of those have video reviews attached to them, but I will make sure that all the video reviews are up in the card symbol above. Let me know in the comment box below what books you've given 1-star reviews to. As always, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more content from me, click the subscribe button, hit the bell for notifications. If you're looking for ways to support the channel through Patreon or any other means, they're down in the description box below. And if you're interested in following me on social media, all the links will be down in the description box below. And as always, I'll be back with another video soon.